Hello and welcome to Pioneers Technologies Limited. My name is Mukara Wasiu. In this video, I want to show you how to develop different graphic user interfaces. GUIs are very important in every programming language, and Python is not an exception. GUIs are very important in the sense that they allow the user of a platform, of an application, to communicate with the application itself. So GUIs are platforms whereby the user is able to communicate with the application. The application is also able to accept input from the user. There are different types of GUIs. You have the scroll bar, you have even the progress bar. You have different sort of GUIs, which I'm going to show you in this video. So let us fire up our IDE. I'll be using the PyCharm. You can use whichever IDE you are comfortable with. I'm going to start my PyCharm. So I'll allow that to load the components. So I'll open a new file, or I may use this one the way I like it to be. So before you start anything in Python, always ensure that your skeletons are updated, and also always ensure that you make sure that every setting is put in place. So I can start building my GUI in Python, but I need first of all let you know that GUIs are built in Python using the tkinter package. So we are going to import the tkinter. We are also going to import ttk from tkinter, because ttk is where we have access to different types of GUIs. So in short form, you can call it GUI. So you can also call it GUI, whichever way you are comfortable with. So I would like to first of all import the tkinter package. I'll say from tkinter. So I'm going to import the whole package from tkinter. Whenever you are importing asterisk, you are importing the whole package. So use asterisk to import every package that is found inside tkinter. And from there, I'm also going to import ttk. So I'll say from tkinter, I'm going to import ttk. So while I'm done with that, the next thing I'm going to do is to create an object from the tkinter. I'm going to call the object root. So I will say tk, capital letter T, small letter k. Be careful about this. Anything other than this is going to render you an error. So we can see the tkinter package has been imported because I've created an object from it. So I call the object root, which is a variable. So I'm going to create a button. Let me create a variable button, and I'm going to make the button to be equal to ttk dot. If I put dot, you see you have all the different types of packages that are inside tkinter. So you can see all the GUIs one after the other. So this time around, I'm going to create a button. So I'll choose button. So when I choose button, I'll use the root variable, which is the first parameter. Then I'll put a text inside my button. So let me call this text click me. That's the name of the text that's going to appear on my button. So when I do that, I need to pack my button. So use the pack method to always pack it, because if you don't pack it, it's not gonna work. So after packing, then I can create a text. I say button dot. I can create a text if I like. So let me put a text right there. I'll say text, and I'll call another text. Let me just use this for another text. Then I'm going to call this one press me. Press me. That's the name of another text. Now I'm going to configure the button. So let me say button dot config. This configuration means that you are setting up your button how you want it to look like. So I'm going to say the text on the button is going to be push me. That's the text on the button. So after that, I need to configure it. So I'll say button.config. So after the configuration, what you need to do now is to typecast your button into a variable. I'm going to typecast it into a string because in typecasting, the variable you are typecasting to is going to be on the left hand side. The variable you are typecasting is going to be on the right hand side, and both will be separated by a parenthesis. So after you have done that, all I need to do now is that I will now say ttk dot. I need to put a label, so I use the label. Then I'll use the roots. Then the rules will be followed by the text on it. It's going to be hello tk enter. I say hello tk enter. So when I do that, then I need to pack it. That is very compulsory. After packing, what comes next is for me to now close the loop using the roots dots. I need to run the main loop. So when I run the main loop, that ends the whole creation of the button that I want to create. So let me run this code, all things being equal. Okay, you see that? This is the button I'm talking about. You can see, push me is a button, LOTK enter is a text on the button. So this is how you create a button in a GUI that is associated with Python. So you need to understand that GUIs are so important for you to communicate with the application, and it affords the user the opportunity to communicate effectively with the application. So don't forget that you need to create an object from the package tkinter. After creating an object, then you need to do what we call the packing, and you need to configure it in such a way that you put the text that are necessary on the button. So these are the ways and the steps in which you need to take when you are creating a button. And now I can even create something else, which is going to be another GUI that might be so important for me to use for you in this your journey of learning how to create GUIs. So to do more on the Tkinter and on the creation of GUIs, you can also add a constructor in such a way that that constructor helps you to create what you will be displayed what will be displayed on your interface that the user will interact with. So let me go down and delete the whole of this. So I'm going to create a class. You know, before you can create a constructor, there has to be a class. Let's call it hello app. So we create a class in Python by using the colon. So you come down a step. Let's create a constructor def underscore underscore init underscore underscore. Then you use the self. By default, self is the first parameter that appears in every constructor creation. Now let me create a variable master. This master is going to be this parameter, and it's going to be the argument that will show us the way toward creating our GUI. So let's have a label, and this label, I'm going to create an object called label. So this is going to come from ttk.label. So I'm going to create a label. So after doing that, then I want to use the master variable to now develop a text that is going to say hello tkinter. So when that is done, I'm now going to create another variable called self. This self is like an object that is going to be representing my grid. So I'll say the grid. Then when I use grid, the grid must have a row. So let me make the row to be, the first one is going to be from 0. a row and a column. I'm also going to say it's going to start from 0, and the column span is going to be 2. So when that is done, I need to create an object of the TTK. So I'll use a button. So when I use a button, let me use the master variable the same way I used it earlier. Then I'll create a text. This text is going to say, let's say, Lagos. That is the city that I am presently. So after that, I'll create a command. This command is going to say, I'm going to make it to refer to self.lagos. So which is this is going to be a variable that I'm going to use. So this variable, by creating it, I'm making it to be the command that I'm going to refer to later. So let me say Lagos hello. So this is a variable and also called an object. So let me create a grid from that. I'll say grid, and that grid is going to span a row. This row is going to be the first row, then the column is going to be the second. So now that is the variable that I have presently. Let me create another variable from TTK. It's going to be a button, and this button this time around, just like I did earlier, I'm going to create it from the master argument. And this time around, I'm going to create a text. This text is going to say a button. Then I'm going to create a command as well. This command is going to say self dot a button. That is going to be an object that I'm creating. Let me use self dot Ibadan underscore, let me say hello to Ibadan also. So when I do that, then I will use the grid, which means I'm creating a grid from that is in the second row. Then the column is going to be 1 as well. So when I do that, it means that I've constructed an object which I can use later in my code. This object is going to be Lagos Hello and Ibadan Hello, because I've created them with the self keyword. Self.lagos.hello is a variable, and it is gotten from the constructor. So by using self.lagos.hello, I've created a variable in its essence that I can use later in my code. So now let me create another method. This method is going to say, let's say, Lagos hello, because this is the method that I want to refer to, Lagos hello. So I'll say Lagos hello. So the first parameter in every Python function is self. So please note that. So self dot label, let me create a variable dot label. Then I'm going to configure it, and I'm going to configure it to have a text, and this text is going to say, let's say, how are you, how are you. So that's what the text is going to say. Now let me do another method for Ibadan as well. I'll say def, then I'll say Ibadan hello. So I'll copy that. So when I do that, put a bracket. Self is the first parameter. Then I'll create a method self.label. So this label is going to refer to a configuration that I'm going to do now. This configuration is going to say, let me create the text first. The text is going to say, how are you over there, Ibadan? Let's say here I'll say, how are you, Lagos? So let us do that for Lagos and Ibadan respectively. So I can have my method in that manner. So the next thing that is going to follow now is for me to enter into the main method. So I'll enter into the main method, and I'll make sure that I now call the different object. The main method has to be on the same line, on the same straight line as the class. So on this same straight line. So now I'm going to say def main, then I'll do the closing tag, which is if underscore underscore name underscore underscore is exactly equal to underscore underscore main. So this means that if if the name, which is the parameter in the main method, is the same as the one that is now in the code, then the method here, which is this def main, should be run. So that means the method should be invoked. That's the meaning of that. So this means that this method should be invoked. So then I'll create the root, which is the object that I'm going to create from TTK. Remember, this object this time around is coming inside the main method. Earlier, we did it inside the class. That is, when we're not giving a class, when we're not introducing a class, we created this object right at the top, immediately after the TTK import. So that was the way we did it, but this time around we are going to create it inside the main method. So I'm going to create an app from that. So this app is going to be the object that I'm going to now use to call the class, this class. So I'm going to save it inside this class. I'll say app equals the class, then I'll use the class, and the root is going to be the parameter that the class is going to use. And after that, I can say that the root should now call any of the methods, but I'm going to tell it to run the main loop now so that all these methods can be called. So that is how it's going to be. Let's give this a run. Let's stop the one that was on. Okay, that's it. You see that? This is the GUI that we just created. If I say Lagos, say how are you Lagos? If I click Ibadan, say how are you over there Ibadan. So it is showing us that the method has been invoked. You see that here where we have Lagos, it says how are you Lagos. That is the text inside it that we want to run. And now here, when we just invoked Ibadan and we click on it, it gives us Ibadan. It says how are you over there Ibadan. If I click Lagos, it gives me this text that is right inside of it. So that's how you create a button in Python using the graphical user interface, so that can you can use it for your communication with every application, and it's going to be an interface between the client and the application itself. So it's a very important part of Python to know how to do it. So let's continue to create the other aspect. Let's create another type of GUI. So I'm going to close this. So I'm going to remove all the code here, because I want to use it to create a selection box, a box in which a user is given the opportunity to select from a list of options. So that's what we call the selection box. So in this time, I'm going to do a little bit of manipulation. I'm going to remove the content of the main method. Then here, I'm going to put the root variable. I'm going to call it root. So I'll create the TK package. So I have a variable called root, which is an object. So let me create a month variable as well. This month variable, I'm going to use string var, because whenever you are creating a variable and you want the variable to be in form of text, it's very important that I use the string variable. So the string var is a variable that is inside the TK inter package. So let me create a combo box. This combo box is going to be a combination box, which is going to be gotten from ttk.combo box. You can see that. So by creating ttk, as an object, I will have access to all the packages that are inside the TK Inter, which I have imported globally using this asterisk. So using the combo box, then I can use the root. I can use the root to now use it for creating other variables that are under it. So let's use the text variable. Then let's make the month to be the text variable that I've created in line 5. So I will now need to pack the combo box, because after you do it, you have to pack it according to Python. So after packing, then I will need to use the combo box to now do some configurations. I'll use the config keyword, where I'm going to now use the values that I want to use in my combo box. It's going to be the months from January to December. So let me put that January within parentheses. I'm going to say February. So I'm going to pause the video so I can complete it. So in this video, you can see that I have completed the months. The values have been set to January to December. So now I'm going to have to print each of them. So I'm going to print the month. Then I'm going to use the getter method for that. If you are coming from Java, you know the idea of the getter and the setter methods. So let's also use the month, calling the setter. So this set method, let's set it to December so that it will be the starting point. Then I can now create another variable. I'll say month.set, and this is going to be, I'll call it not a month. That is, if someone did not choose any of the options. So that is the month. Let's go and create a year variable. This year variable is going to be gotten from string var, or it's going to be a string, just like I got the first one. Then I'm going to use the spin box. This spin box, I'm going to store my variable in the spin box. So I'll use spin box. So let me make this one small letter. Then capital letter spin box. Then when I do that, I'll use my spin box. My spin box, I'm going to use it to build a set of years using the root parameter that I've set earlier. So I'll use from. Mind you, Python uses from underscore. So please take note of that. If there's no underscore there, you're gonna have an error. So I'm going to start from 1990, and then I'm going to end in the year that I am presently, that we are 2024. Then I'll use the text variable. Say the text variable should be equal to the year that I've created earlier. Then after that, I will need to pack it. So using the pack variable. So this is very important. Then after that, we can print the year. We can print the year. Let's say print the year. So when we print the year, say print the year dot, let's just get it the getter method from that. So after we have done that, what is next for us is to now use the main loop to run it. So I'm going to use the root to run the main loop. So I'll use it to run the main loop. So when I do that, let me run the opening and closing tags. So I'll run that. You see that when I run it, you see not a month. That's where we have not chosen any option. So once we choose January, January goes there. And also we can choose the years too. 1992, on and on like that. 2024, and that's the last. So that's how you use the GUI. You use the combo box to create a set of drop downs that you can use. I can drag this to increase the width. So this is how you can do your GUIs in such a way that you have options. You can choose from any option. So we are in the month of July. You can choose July 2024. So that's how it is when you are creating a GUI in Python. One additional GUI we're gonna create now is the progress bar. Let's create the progress bar and let's see how it is done in Python. So I'm going to remove everything here. I'm going to leave the root variable, which is what I'm still gonna need. So I'll create a progress bar variable. I'll call it progress bar equals, then I'll get that from ttk dot progress bar. So when I do that, then all I need to do is to use the root that I've created to do the orientation of how the bar is going to be. Is it going to be oriented horizontally or vertically? So this time around, I'm going to make it horizontal. So after that, I'll create a length variable, length gth. So I'll make that to be 200. So after that, I'll need to pack the progress bar. So that's the pack. Then after I've done that, then let us do a configuration of the progress bar by calling the config keyword, the config method. So when we call the config method, let's set the mode of the bar to be indeterminate, meaning that the mode is going to be indeterminate in the sense that it can keep going on and on and on, because a progress bar should always move. So let us do the progress bar to have a starting point, because it has to start, and whatever starts must also stop. So let us call the method stop on it, because when the progress bar starts, there must be a stopping point. It cannot continue incessantly and continuously. So let's have a progress bar, then I'll do some configuration on it. So when I configure it, then I'll use the mode. This mode is going to be determinate. So let us see determinate. So when we do that, then I will use the maximum parameter. This maximum, I'm going to set the bar to 11.0. Then I'll use the value that's going to be the current value of the bar to be 4.2. So when I do that, then I can now tell the progress bar to do some configuration, and I'm going to set the value to 8.0. Let me set it to 8.0. When I set it to 8.0, then the progress bar must have a step. That is how many steps is going to skip. Because when we're talking about calibration has to go with steps to skip. So I'll do another progress bar that it should step by 5. So this is going to be the stepping of the bar. So now when I do that, then I'm going to refer to a variable value. I'm going to create a value variable. It's going to be double, because at every point in time, the progress bar will be showing some values. So I'll show value. This is going to be gotten from double var. That's a double variable. So when I do that, what I'm going to do next is to now set the progress bar, so that the progress bar is configured in such a way that the variable that I've set, which is the variable that I've set before, I can equate it to the value. Then after that, I will now need to scale the bar, meaning that when I scale it, I'll use the scale method. Then I'll use the root variable that I created in line 4 to do some orientation, because this is the horizontal orientation. So now after the orientation, the next thing is I want to know the length of the bar. Let's give it 400. Then I want to know that the variable is set to the value that I created right in line 17. So now the bar will start from this location. Remember I said from must have an underscore. That is the way Python does. If you don't use the underscore, you're gonna have some errors. So 0.0, let's set it to 0.0, and let's have it to 11.0, just like I have done in line 11, where I set it to 11.0 as the maximum point. So whatever value you set here must be the same as the one that you set here. Please take note of that. So after that, I'm going to scale the bar. I'm going to call the scale method and I'll pack it. Then after packing the scale, then I want to scale it by giving it a set value, meaning that I'm going to set the value to 4.2, which is what the scale is going to reveal. And also, I'm going to print that same value in terms of scale dot get setter. So this getter, we call it getter. So after I've done that, I have to run the main loop. So I'm going to say root dot main loop. So when I run the main loop, then I've closed my function and I can run my function. I can run it now. So I think everything is set. Let's run the function. Let's run the code. So that's it. You see my progress bar? That is exactly the progress bar that has been set to 4.2. And this time around, you can see that the progress bar is at 4.2. It's not up to 5 because we have set it to 4.2. But why is my progress bar not moving? I think I need to look at my code. It should be able to move. Let me run it again. Okay, this should be able to move when I drag it because I set it to determine it. I should be able to determine the value at some point. Let me look at my code again and see what is wrong with my code. Okay, I think my main loop here has closed the progress bar. It has made it not to have access to the code immediately below it. So I'm going to have to remove this main loop. When I remove it, then this is going to be the closing main loop. So let's run it again. Okay, here we come, and the progress bar can now be moved. So it can be moved back and forth. So this shows the progress bar that we are talking about. This is going to give a user the progress of a download. For example, if you are downloading a stuff online and you need to be communicated with to tell you the level you are at the point of your download. Because if you are not communicated with, then the user might lose interest in everything. But as long as he or she sees that this thing is about to finish downloading, I think he's going to have rest of mind that he will soon be done with whatever task that he has started. So that's the essence of the GUI, and it's very important that we note all this so that we can create very good user interfaces. Another type of GUI we can create is the scroll bar. The scroll bar is equally important like the progress bar, because when you are scrolling, like in this my PyCharm environment, I need to be able to scroll up and down, horizontally and vertically. So vertically, I can scroll. Horizontally, I should be able to scroll as well, just like you are seeing it here. So that is the essence of communicating with your user. So in this example, I'm going to remove this code. So I'm going to create a scroll bar. And this scroll bar, I'm going to call it canvas, because it's going to be a series of lines. Because the canvas, then I'll use the canvas. Then from the root variable that I've created in line 4, I'm going to use the scroll bar. Let's call it the scroll region, and I'm going to define the scroll region in this manner. I'm going to start from 0, 0, then to move to 640, then 480. So after that is done, let me set the background. BG is background. I'm going to set it to white. So after that is done, the next thing I need to do is get the scroll, because along the x-axis, I want to be able to scroll along the x-axis. So this is going to be my x-axis. So after creating the x scroll variable, meaning that the variable I'm going to use on the x-axis, what I'm going to do now is to use the scroll. I'll create it from the TTK because I need to actually create a scroll bar. So I'll get that from TTK. So I'll go down to get the scroll bar. Then after doing that, I'll need to put the root variable, which is what I created in line 4. So after that, I'm going to use the scroll region because that has already come from the scroll bar. So I'm going to use the scroll region and call it, did I spell scroll region correctly? Okay, so the scroll region is going to be equal to the orient. Okay, don't let me use the scroll region. I'll rather use the orientation. Let me use orientation because I need to give it a particular direction. So I'm going to orientate it to the horizontal direction. Then I'll use command to do the canvas that I want to create. So I'll use canvas.xview. So along the x-axis, I'm going to use the x view because I'm doing it along the x-axis. So for the y scroll, let me just copy this to save me time because I'm going to create the y-axis, which is the vertical axis. So I'll call this one y scroll so that when I want to scroll along the y-axis, I can do that. Then I'll orient it and create the y view. So when that is done, what I need to do now is to now use the canvas. Actually, I'll need to use the canvas. So when I use the canvas, I'll need to configure it. Configuration in the sense that I'll do the scroll command. So it is going to give me the scroll. So meaning that this is going to set the scrolling of the y-axis and the x-axis. I'm going to set them to the way they should so that they can respond accordingly. So as a y scroll command 2 will need to be set to y scroll, then, and I'm going to use the setter method to do that. So when I do that, this time method does what it needs to do. Then let me create a canvas variable. So this canvas, I'm going to use the grid region. So the grid, I'm going to use it along the row. The row is going to be 1. Then the column is going to be 0. So when I do that, the next thing I'm going to do is use the scroll, and the scroll I'll get it from the grid so that the row can be configured in that manner. So I'll give it row to be equal to 2 this time around because I've made 1 in line 10. Then I'll make the column to be 1. Then after doing that, I'm gonna have to set the sticky parameter for both of them. Let me set this one to be along the north south because I'm talking about the x axis, and for the y axis I'm going to set it to the east west because the x-axis is going to be the east-west because it's along the horizontal direction, and the y-axis is not going to be north-south. So I'm going to set this on to east-west. So now let's create our method. Let me create a method for the canvas so that this canvas can listen to a click event. So let's say canvas click. So when I click it, so that it can also respond, so I'm going to have an event variable. This event variable is going to be closed. Let me just close it first. Let me close it down here. I'll say canvas dot, I'm going to bind. So when I bind, I'll bind it with this 2. So I'll use the L variable. Let me just use the L parameter to do that. Then I'll use the canvas. I'll call the canvas click method, which I've declared here. So I'm calling this method that I've declared in line 13. So that is how it's gonna be. So I'm going to have to go up. I'll need to also do some manipulations right inside this canvas click method. So I'll say x is equal to, let me set the canvas. I'll set the canvas to go along the x-axis. So it's going to be canvas x. So that for that. So you're going to bring in the event also along the x-axis. So I'm going to do the same for the y-axis. I'm going to do the same for the y-axis. So I'll call this one y. Then it's going to be event.y. So when that is done, the next thing I'm going to do is to now create the method which is called create over. I'm going to use the create over method so that I can have a movement that I intend to have. So this is going to be in such a way that I'm going to say it's going to move backward in a negative manner 5 times, also backward 5 times along the y-axis. Then after that, I can move it forward again in 5 ways, and also along the y-axis I can also move it back and forth. So x minus 5, x plus 5, back and forth. Y minus 5, y plus 5, back and forth. So and after that, let me just use the method, let me use the property fill to put some colors there. So let me use green. I like green. That's the color of Nigerian flag. So that's that. So and that's also the color of Pioneers Technologies Limited. That's the official logo. So let us know that this canvas is going to be what is going to allow to be able to scroll. So it's very important that we know this. I'm going to change this one to 1 because that was a mistake on my side. So let's run this code. Let me go up and run it. Oh, there seems to be an error somewhere. Let's check. I think there's an error. Canvas link missing one required position arguments event. Oh, let us check where that error might be so that when we check the errors, we'll be able to know where our error lies. So I'm going to have to go through the code, check the error. So there is need for us to run this code, but I am having some errors. Let me look at the code. Oh, there is one positional required argument. So let's see where the error lies in our code. In the code, I think I need to change this to vertical because it shouldn't be horizontal twice. The y-axis should be vertical, and also I think this needs to be the y-axis, and that needs to be the x-axis. Then I think I need to do some configuration here in line 9. Let me do some configuration. Let's say canvas dot, let me create a grid. Then I will need to make it to be row of 1, then column of 0, because that is the starting point of the column. So when I do that, I think since this is 1 in line 10, line 11 should be 2, and I want to make the line 12, the row, to be 1 because this is another x-axis entirely. So I cannot repeat x scroll twice. I think I should do this and put it right here and change this to y-axis because I have x and y-axis respectively. Then when I do this, let me look at what might be wrong again. Let me look at what might be wrong again in the code. I think everything is set. The positional argument has been supplied. So let me run this code. Okay, I still have an error. Let me take a look at it again. So there's this for me to look at the code and see where the errors might lie. This canvas click should not be called as a method, it should be called as an ordinary variable. So that is what I think should happen, because we've used it as a method here. We cannot, when you are binding it to the canvas, we cannot call it as a method again. We have to call it as a single variable. And that I have done. I do not think there's any other error here again. So let me run it again. Oh, and we have it. So you see now along the y-axis, I'm able to scroll. Okay, I'm not able to scroll yet. Something is wrong. Okay, but the bars are now appearing along the x and y axis. Let me see what might be wrong with the code. I think I do need to call this as a method. I need to call it as a variable, x view and the y view, so that both the x bar and the y bar can be ready for me to scroll. So let me run again. Okay, this time around, am I able to scroll it? Oh, that's good. I'm now able to scroll the x and the y axis. So that's how to prepare and construct your scroll bar using the GUI. So you can see how important it is to be able to have a scroll bar whenever you are interacting with your user and whenever the user is interacting with the application. So this is how we develop a scroll bar, and knowing it is going to put you in a very good position in order to know more about GUIs. This time around, I'm going to declare a mouse event GUI. That is a GUI that listens to a mouse event. So what I'm going to do now is, let me close this window, then I'll go up there and erase all the code. I'll clear them. So let me define a mouse method. So I'll call this mouse press. This mouse press is going to listen to an event. So I'm going to register an event there in the method. Let's create a global variable. This global variable, I'm going to call it previous. So when this is created, I want to have a method that's going to print the type of the variable. So this is going to be by way of putting a curly bracket, and also let me just make sure that the method closes here. Let me make sure it closes there. Then I'm going to do format. Then I'll format the event event. So I'll look for the type of event that it is. So once that is done, I can say the next thing is to print a widget. So let's print a widget. I'll also declare what I'll use as my widget. So with that widget, I'm going to say that this is going to be a widget, and this is going to be by way of formatting. And when I format, I'll register the event.widget. So by this, I've registered it. By what I have in the single quote, I've declared the key to that. So these are the keys, widgets and the type. So they are the keys. Now, after I've done that, let me declare another variable. I'll call it num. So let's put that in a single quote. So let me just cut away this, put inside a double quote, a single quote, sorry. So when I put that, then all I'm gonna do is to also create its own curly bracket. And when that is done, I'm going to have to also format this in such a way that this is going to be given event dot num. So I'll call that variable num. So I've created this num variable by that. So now let's have my x-axis so that my mouse can move with the x-axis. So let's call it x. Then I'm going to say that this is going to take the double quote, single quote, and within that I'm going to have my curly bracket. So let me format that event. Let's format it, and I'm going to call it event.x so that that event captures x. So that's how the code is going to progress. So this will be done for y as well. So for the sake of time saving, I'm going to use this for y. Then I'll use this as y as well. So I need some indentation there. Yeah, there we go. So after I've done all that, then let's have my root. So I'm going to have the root, which is going to be x underscore root. So when I have that, this is going to be in such a way that I'm going to have this root. Then I'll do it in such a way that I'll format it to register the event with respect to the root variable. So I'll call it root. I'll call it x underscore root so that I can register the root variable there. I need an underscore here. So once that is done, let's do that for y as well. I'll save time by copying that. Sorry. So I'll call it y. Then I'll call this y root. So when that is done, then I will now need to declare this global variable that I have here. I'll use it to call I'll use as the variable that will store the whole of the events that I've declared in the parameter of the mouse method. So that is going to be what I'm going to do. And after this, I need to register my main method, def main. So when I do that, then right there, I don't think I need a main method here because all I'm going to do is just create a canvas, and this canvas is going to, at the end of the day, rely on the main loop from the root variable that I'm going to create. So I've not created the root variable, so I will need to create the root variable. Then at the end of the day, the root variable is going to be used to run as the main method. So what I'm going to do now is to now declare the draw method. So that, because I need a method that's going to draw the mouse. This is going to listen to the mouse press. I will need the method that will draw. So this draw method, I'm gonna make it listen to an event parameter. Then once I do that, I'm going to say that this global variable, I'll make it global. The global, let me also make it to be the previous variable. So I'll call the canvas. The canvas is going to create, I'm going to use the canvas to create, I'll declare a method called create line. Meanwhile, create line method is going to be used, let's call it create line. So this is going to listen to the previous global variable. Then I'll make it register x, and I'll also make it register y. So when it does that, I'll use the event in respect to x and the event as well with respect to y. So when that is done, let me declare a width parameter and initialize it to 5. Then from there, I can now get the prev and make it to listen to the event. So with that, I've created this draw event. Then let's create our root. Here, I'm going to declare the root because the root has to be on the same line as the class. So I'm going to say tk. So once the root is declared, then I can now use the canvas to draw the root. This canvas I showed me red line, I will now use within this after after the object has been created. I'm now going to use the root to now draw the canvas. So this canvas, this red line should go after I've created the canvas variable right here. So I first of all need to create the canvas variable. I'll get it from canvas, capital letter canvas. That should be capitalized, capital canvas. So canvas, then that will go to use the root as the first parameter, use the width. Then after using the width, I'll initialize to 640. Our height is going to be 480. Then after doing that, let me set the background color to white. I'll set it to white. So now, after that, I need to pack the canvas. If you observe in line 17, the red line has gone away. So after that, let me pack the canvas. Then the canvas will need to be packed. That's very important. So that, then I need to bind it. I need to bind the canvas with respect to a button. So I need to declare a button press. I need to declare a button press event so that I listen to the press event. And when it does that, then the mouse is going to be used to now mouse press. So this mouse press that is on line 4 will now be listened to, but it will not be listened to except like an ordinary variable. So now after that, I'll do the canvas. I'll make it to bind as well. I'll get to bind, and when it binds, then I'm gonna use my B1. I'm going to use B1 to set it on motion. So once that is set on motion, then I can now call this method draw, so that I can also be able to draw with my mouse, just like I'm able to mouse press here. I should be able to also draw with the mouse. So that is how it's going to be. I will need a comma here, so I'll need to use the draw method right there. So once I have done all this, then the main loop will now have to run in this manner. So that's the way it is. Then what I'm going to do now, I'm going to run this code. Let's see. Is there any errors? Okay, there's an error. The draw is missing one required operational argument. So let's see where the mistake lies. So I'm going to see the code. Let me start from line 1 and study my code and make sure I have not made. Okay, this my TTK is not yet highlighted. That means I've not used it in my code at all. So I'm going to see what is wrong with that. So let me scroll a little bit and see what is wrong. Okay, so let me go down and see what I can do. So there is a serious error here which is an error of omission. So I want to believe that if I have declared an X root here with small letter, it should be small letter here as well, not capitalized. And also, I believe that this mouse press should not be with a parenthesis because the event, the mouse press event has already been created. So at the point of call within the bind method, it should be called as an ordinary variable. So now the same thing applies to this draw event. So I'm going to give this a run. Oh, and we have it. Let me draw my mouse. Oh, that's it. So I can write my name with the mouse. I can say Pinus. N A and S. This is how we create a mouse event. So when we draw the mouse, we have that. And when we also press it, when we press the mouse, we press it, then you draw. So that is how it is. Thank you very much. I think with this GUI representation and giving you virtually everything you need in GUI, I think you can be able to go ahead with your own project and create more GUIs. Thank you. Please remember to share and like the video. Let everybody benefit from it all. Share the video, like it, and I'll expect you back on my channel, Pinus Technologies Limited. Thank you and God bless.